I'm Sherilyn Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. This is episode 296 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. And today we're talking about how to teach your tween or teen about money. So this is a subject that is very timely for me as a parent because I have both a tween, soon to be a teen, and two teenagers in the house. And I have spent some time over the last several years making my fair share of mistakes in this territory. And also, I think getting some things right. And it's been kind of fun to watch how the process is unfolding for my three kiddos. And this came up as a topic in a coaching call recently. And I thought, this is a perfect time to talk about this topic because we're sitting here in summer break for most of our children. And it's a time when the demands on them for cognitive learning are a little bit lower, right? You might be mean like I am and having your kids do summer reading or summer math. But in general, the demands on their cognitive learning is a little bit lower. And so there's room for them to take on new subject matter, right? To learn some new material and to turn that learning mechanism towards something that's not necessarily a school subject. So I think when we think about when is the right time to really start talking to kids about money, lots of people start giving kids allowances very early on. And some people never do, right? I never got an allowance growing up. My parents had a different philosophy around money that also worked. And so there was no allowance per se given to me as a teaching mechanism. And I have friends who have been giving their kids allowances since very early ages. So there's not a right answer here. What I thought I might share today is a little bit of the conceptual framework that I think has been helpful to talk to my kids about, and also why I chose to dig into this and give you some food for thought if it's something that you've been thinking about but aren't quite sure how to get started. Like, how much money do we want to give them access to? And how do we set some controls around where they can and can't spend it? And how do you look at the difference between what you're going to continue to fund just as a parent and what you're going to ask them to fund out of the money that they now have access to or control over? And I think those are the questions that sometimes keep us stuck or maybe stop us before we even get started when it comes to opening a dialogue around money. Another thing I think sometimes gets in our way is there can be a lot of privacy concerns around money, not wanting our kids to know how much money we make as an income or what certain things cost in our household because, let's be honest, we're all afraid they're going to run around and tell their friends about it. So we don't really want that information necessarily out in the world, nor do I think they have to have it in order to get a very solid education around money. So my kids, for example, do not know how much money my husband or I earn. They don't have a good sense of what everything in our house cost or what our bills are unless they have visibility to them, like the grocery bill, if they're standing in the checkout at the grocery store with us. But those are very personal decisions around how much information you want to share. And my 18-year-old is now approaching a place where I am more comfortable and confident that she can keep some of that information under close wraps. And it's more important for her to have a very real frame of reference around how much certain things cost and how much money is necessary to be able to live a certain lifestyle. So there's a bit of a sliding scale of how much of your own information you're going to share with kids as they grow up. But I'm going to talk more about the starting point of a financial education today. So this is particularly going to be relevant if you have a tween or a very precocious, like even 10-year-old, I would say, is probably the earliest stage where this is going to make a ton of sense. And if you haven't really gotten started on this, this could be viable all the way up to a kid who's 15, 16, 17 years old. So that's the range that I think is probably in target for these concepts. And I want to talk about 4 concepts that I think are important to financial education as we get started, really providing a framework for kids to understand what we mean when we talk about financial independence or good, solid financial decision making or financial responsibility. Like there's a lot of terminology that we throw around that they may not have a good framework for. And what they're hearing instead is, oh my gosh, do you have any idea how much that cost? Or why are you always asking me for those? That's so expensive. Do not understand that that's so expensive. And the truth is they don't understand. A $5 or $6 Starbucks drink to them is all they know. That's normal to them. They don't even know that when we used to go to Starbucks back in the day, it was like $2 for a fancy drink, right? To them, that's just normal. Or some of the name brands that they're really attracted to and what they cost. Like we've just come out of a period of hyperinflation where I think our frame of reference is still trying to catch up on what is a reasonable price tag on some of these items that they really want. Right. So I think this grounding that I want to provide today is designed to kind of get us all on the same page so that they have some context for our emotion when it's coming through around the subject of money. So the first concept that I think we can start talking to kids about and creating some teaching around is the concept of earning. And I think this is the best place to start because we can't really be financially responsible if we don't have any finances. And it goes back to that notion of we're sort of asking them to dance with an imaginary concept if they aren't in control of some level of money that comes into them, that they then are going to have a little bit of control over how it gets spent or at least influence. So if the most that your kiddos have ever experienced is like board game money, Monopoly money or whatever the board game is that has a bank associated with it, that is so imaginary to them that there's no worth associated with that currency. And so real currency that they can spend somewhere, especially when it's been earned through their own effort, starts to kind of wrap a rubric around what does it take to get this stuff, right? What do I have to do to really get my hands on some of this stuff? So the very first exercise I would recommend is a brainstorm of what are some ways that they could earn money. Now, if they're 16 or older, you could talk about going and getting a job, like a traditional job. And in most places, even at 14 or 15 with a work permit, there are some jobs that you are able to still go get, right? You might, for example, be able to be work at a grocery store as a bagger. You might be able to be like a busboy kind of role at a restaurant. You might be able to work at a facility that does like athletic training for children that maybe hosts camps or classes. So there are places where even before 16, they may be able to have a very part-time job, especially during the summer. But of course, there's also all of the household to household employment jobs like mowing lawns or watering flowers or walking dogs, right? Taking care of pets when people are away on vacation, babysitting, which was probably a lot of our first jobs. I know it was one of my very first jobs was babysitting. So there are what I'm calling household to household employment opportunities because your neighbors, your friends, your colleagues may be in a position to hire your tweens and young teens into some of these roles on an episodic or regular basis, right? They might just need, we're going to be out of town for 1 week. Could your child come by, feed the fish, water the plants, bring the mail in or take the garbage cans down one day? Those kinds of little household help jobs, I think, are very well suited to young children and also regular jobs, like meaning they occur regularly. Like, could they come and babysit every Thursday evening and Tuesday evening because my older child is involved in a sport and it's helpful not to take the toddler? I think those kinds of earning potential roles are there. And then there are also earning opportunities within your household, things that you may be willing to pay them to do. And I would put an asterisk by this and be extra careful that you're not paying them to do things that you consider part of being a good member of the household, right? There are some things that they've probably been doing all along that they were not getting paid for. And I would not start paying them to do those things per se, but there may be extra things that you are currently carrying that you actually could delegate or outsource to your children. And you might be very willing to pay them to do that task. I remember someone on my team this year was paying her tween daughter to wrap Christmas gifts, right? She was like, I hate wrapping. I have a lot of gifts that are coming in and my daughter is perfectly happy to do it, loves doing it. And so I'm paying her to do that. There may be certain things that you do around the house that have always been your role that if they're willing to take it on, you're like, that has worth. This is something that's kind of above and beyond my basic expectations of you as a member of this household, and I'm willing to pay you to do that. So the first step is talking to kids about kind of their ability to put their hand out in the flow of money and get some of it, right? And that even at these ages, there are things that they can do to essentially participate in the economy, right? To provide a service, in their case, it's almost always going to be a service, and earn money. Now, I should say, there are ways that they could potentially also create a product and earn money. When I was in high school, I ran a baking business. And so that's a little, I guess, a hybrid product service, but I really loved to bake when I was in high school, and my mom was a teacher and had a lot of colleagues who wanted homemade baked goods, especially around the holidays, and didn't have the time. And so I had a pretty formalized business around baking and then supplying these teachers with homemade baked goods that they could use during Thanksgiving and the Christmas holidays. And then that extended a little bit throughout the year in kind of like a cookie of the week idea that I had going for a little while. So that idea was like rooted in a hobby and a skill and an interest that I had, but allowed me to turn it into kind of a starter business, a small business. And your kids might have things that they like to make that they could sell that would be different than just providing a service. Okay, so there's just infinite opportunities here. I've seen kids do arbitrage on, they're flipping gym shoes, right? They can buy a gym shoe that's apparently underpriced and then sell it at a higher price. Like older teens and might be able to get into something like that. Myriad of opportunities once they start thinking about ways that they could earn money. But you cannot have financial responsibility or financial independence if you don't have finances. And so this really all starts with earning. After that, I think there are three other important concepts to talk to kids about. I'm going to call them giving, accruing, and spending. Okay? Because one of the most important principles for kids to learn is that money flows, that it comes in, but it doesn't just stay in the bank of you, right? Never to go anywhere else. And I'm really passionate about this one because this is a mistake that I made growing up. When I had my early jobs, when I had the baking business and I was babysitting and then I got a waitressing job. And then right before I went to college, I got my first office job. I really thought that money was like a one-way street. Like I was going to earn it and save it. And it was very, very focused on saving. And that was actually enabled because my parents were very generous with my day in and day out expenses. And I didn't have an expectation placed on me that I had to fund a lot of things myself. So I was lucky in a way that I was able to take all that money and save it. But then when it came time for money to start flowing out, for me to start being able to spend money, I really was a little stuck on how to do that. Okay. Now that may sound like a great problem to have and totally backwards to you, but I think it's one of the several archetypes that kids fall into. We have kids who are inherently savers and they're like, boy, if I get $1 from a birthday gift or I won a prize or a contest or I earned a little bit of money, they just want to hold on to it and they don't really know how to release it. And then of course we have other kids who, as soon as they get $1 in their pocket, they want to spend it, right? I have some of each in my household. So I'm really passionate about these three categories because I was a little bit late in learning how to think in these buckets. So the first one I want to talk about is giving. And we all have a different kind of maybe percentage or metric or place that feels comfortable to us around giving. But I think teaching kids that when they have earned money, that there are places and people and organizations that they can give a small portion of it back to, where they can really see it make a difference, is a great habit to start early, particularly if it's something that you do, right? If you have philanthropic efforts, if you have charitable giving in your portfolio, I think it's particularly powerful to teach from that example, so they have some context for why you do that and how they can get involved really from a very early stage. So giving is something that they can choose with you. Where is a place that they might like to give? And I love it when this is a place that they already feel passionate about. If you have a kid who's really passionate about animals, they might give to an animal shelter. If you have a kid who maybe has had a friend go through a serious illness, they might feel passionate about Children's Hospital or like the Ronald McDonald House. If you have church affiliation, they may see you giving at church and feel like that's a place that they can give. So wherever they feel passionate or called, or it's modeled for them to give, they can do that proportionately to their own earning, right? The amount that they give may not seem very big in absolute dollars, but proportionately, they're starting to build a habit of, when I earn, there's a piece of this that I can turn and put back into causes that I care about.
Hi, it's Cheryl Ann. Thanks for listening. Did you know that the ideas I share on this show are things I also can help you implement? If you want me in your corner helping you find more time for what fills you up, go to brilliant-balance.com/schedule and sign up for a free exploratory call. Give yourself this time. You'll be so glad you did.
And we can talk a little bit about percentages in a minute here, but I'm not going to give you like a rule. I think this is something that's very unique to each family, what might feel like the right amount to be allocated to these various buckets. So once the money comes in as earning, I kind of have these three buckets it's going back out into. Giving is the first one. The second one I'm going to call accruing. Now, you might think I'm going to say saving here, and I am viewing savings as a subset of accruing, okay? I actually think we accrue money for two reasons, and this is what I'm trying to teach my kids. One is to grow. We accrue money so that it can grow, and that would be in any kind of a vehicle where it is earning interest. So investments and interest-bearing savings accounts are places that we put money because we want to keep it there so that it grows, right? So we can take advantage of the compound interest factor. And I think, there are all kinds of resources to teach the details about the power of compound interest, but I would definitely recommend that you illustrate to them how powerful it is to keep money in a place where it is growing over time and to keep it there for kind of a long time. Okay. So the earlier that they learn that a piece of the money that they've earned, a percentage of it is going to go into a place of their choosing or your choosing where it can grow because it is earning interest. That is a very mind-blowingly powerful lesson. And go Google the illustrations of this and the video illustrations of this so that they really see the power of compound interest. And the second reason that we accrue, and the reason I'm keeping it as a separate, like one big bucket that has two subsets, is sometimes we are accruing for bigger purchases. So we don't really intend to leave it there forever, but we don't have enough money in hand to buy the thing we want just yet. So we're accruing. So think about your tween who maybe is earning a low hourly rate for a job that they're doing. Like if they're making minimum wage and they're making $10-ish an hour, or they're working, again, in a household to household situation, and they might even be making less than that. That money, they're not going to get enough of it at any one time to buy the Lululemon Hottie Hots that everybody has to have, right? If you don't know what that is, you don't have a tween girl. That's what I'll tell you about that. Or, they have a particular, an event that they want to go to, or some kind of music equipment that they're excited about. And if they don't have enough money that's coming in at once, this lesson that they can kind of tuck it away and then add more to it the next week and add more to it the next week until they have enough to buy the bigger item is a very powerful lesson, particularly for younger teens. So I think that the two pieces of this, allowing it to kind of accumulate so that you have enough to buy something bigger, right, is the first part of accruing. And the second one would be, I am accruing it with no intention of touching it because I'm putting it there to grow. It's going to be there for a long time. I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to see it there to grow. So, right now that money's all going to be sitting in one account because they're not going to be sophisticated enough to have multiple accounts. But that concept of once we earn, we accrue some of it for later, right? And as much of that as we can have in a growing vehicle as possible, the better. And then the last category is spending. And of course, this is the first one they want to talk about, right? This is where it all starts for them and maybe ends, is how can I get my hands on that money so that I can go buy stuff? And I think the lesson that we want to teach here is really around the tension of a purchase. We've all experienced it as adults, that decision that we have to make about, okay, now that I have money, am I going to spend it on this or that? Right? What's the return on some of these investments? How happy is it going to make me for how long? How useful is this thing? Do I have other ways of getting this that don't cost as much? Do I need it as often? There's tension inherent in buying decisions. But when it's not our money, we can't experience that tension. So the power of this lesson being taught holistically, where they're earning money and they know what it took to get that money in their hands, changes their decision mechanism around what's worth releasing that money for. Okay. So let's say you have a kid who just loves Starbucks drinks and it's like every day they want to stop and get the Starbucks drink. And it's, $5.75 every time you go in there to get them their fancy Starbucks drink. If the deal is that they have to buy the Starbucks drinks, see if it changes the mechanism around how often they want to go, right? Or are they willing to trade down in size of the drink? All of a sudden there's a different tension in the decision-making around spending. And so what it does is it helps get us out of this argument with them about, can I have it? Yes or no? And then we're kind of the bad guy saying no, or the good guy saying yes, as the case may be. But there's no learning happening inside of that. It's just an us versus them setup that's not their fault. They just don't know enough about the equation we're running in our heads that's helping us make a good decision, right? When we're telling them no because that's expensive, or no because we just had one 2 days ago, they don't really understand why that matters, okay? Until they have some skin in the game and it's their money that they're really making these decisions around. So earning, and then how that breaks out into giving, accruing, and spending is up to you. I think if you're looking for a touchstone, 10% for giving, maybe even not quite 10%. Accruing it could be as high as 30 to 40% of what they're earning at this stage of life, leaving them with, 50 to 60% of the total earnings that they then can turn around and spend. But those are sliding scales, and you can find your way to a number with your child that really feels right for you and for them. Now, I want to talk, if you taught those 4 things, like this summer, if your tween walked away with a really solid understanding of those 4 concepts and a live learning lab of actually doing it, right? Of earning money and then moving it into these buckets for giving and accruing and spending, and having conversations about the tension that spending bucket creates. I mean, wow, are you sending them back to school in the fall a few steps ahead, right, of where they are today? And I want to give you one idea for a tool that enables this. And I honestly fought my daughter about this. I was like, no, we're not doing it. What I did with my older 2 kids is I waited until they were 15 and we opened bank accounts. You have to be 15 to open these bank accounts at our bank. So I opened a checking account and a savings account for both of my older kids, and started teaching these lessons, right, around earning and accruing and giving. And we did it all through the bank. And then they have a bank issued debit card. But my younger daughter found out about a product called the Green Light card. Some of you listening may have heard about this before. And she wanted a Green Light card because she, I think, thought it would be really cool to have a credit card in her phone case. I wasn't so sure about this until I realized how difficult it was becoming to manage cash. So to have a kid, my youngest is turning 13 this summer. So she's still 12 and we have had this card for under a year. So she was 12 when she got it. And what was becoming challenging was equipping her with cash when she needed it, right? So it started actually a little bit as a necessity of, I think this will be more convenient if you essentially have a digital payment mechanism, right? If you can swipe a card because you're not with me and I don't have an easy way to get you cash in that moment. And the Greenlight card is essentially, I think of it as like a debit card with training wheels. And I'll link this in the show notes for you if you get excited about this idea and want to go get one for your kids. But the concept is that they are issued an actual debit card, like they can carry it around with them, and your bank account is connected to that card. So you can transfer money to the card, it works just like a debit card at that point, and you do that through an app on your phone. And you can set it up so that it transfers in accordance with like chores or jobs that you give them. So when we were saying, if your child is going to do some things for you at home and you agree to, this is how much money I will pay you to do that, then you can transfer that money through the app from your bank account to their card. Another thing we do in our house is if the kids are given cash, like say from a grandparent or whatever, then we take the cash because cash is just difficult for them to navigate. And we just transfer the money to their digital account, right? So we deal with the cash and they get kind of the digital version of the cash loaded into their card. And the Greenlight card allows you to set spending limits by category. So rather than just giving them like, you have carte blanche access, you can spend this thing wherever you want, you can put category spending controls in place. And then you can also leave some unrestricted spending so that you're sure that they're not going to go spend everything that's on their debit card at a place that you were not in alignment to. You also can instantly transfer additional funds to them. So we've had situations where my daughter is like, let's just say she's at the mall with friends and a friend's parent and she finds something and she's FaceTiming me from the dressing room and wants to buy it. I've been able to say, yeah, this is one I will buy. And I've transferred the funds in real time to her debit card so that she can go ahead and complete that purchase. So there's this ability to, it's instantly transferred to them. And another thing I learned this summer when we had to put a little bit of, we were trying to change a behavior that I did not love in our household. And I decided that I was going to institute fines using the Greenlight card. So in addition to adding funds, you also can take funds back. And so we were having a little issue. This might be relatable for you, with food being left around the house. Bowls that food were consumed in that were not cleaned out, that were kind of left in a bedroom or the living room, or wrappers from things. And it was driving my husband nuts and it was driving me nuts. And so we said, it's $3 every time we find the food where it doesn't belong. Okay. So we're going to take a picture of it to prove it happened. We're going to still ask you to come get it. And we're going to take $3 off the card. Great habit change mechanism, right? Being able to fine for certain behaviors that you might be really trying to quickly change the frequency of, being able to take money back and forth off of this card is helpful. So Greenlight card is, what I like about it having training wheels is I see every transaction. It comes through as an alert on my phone. I'm able to put some controls around spending where we need them. I'm able to instantly transfer money to or get it back. And again, of course, it's a debit card, meaning we can't rack up a lot of expenses. So we're kind of with training wheels around how to get prepared to one day have a credit card and be responsible with that credit card. And so this mechanism for digital payments and being able to have the card has been very helpful. Now, I know some of you will use Apple Pay, which is also very effective if your kids have phones. So there's lots of different ways. This is not the only way, but it's a card that we've had a good experience with. I think it's like $5 a month to have the app. It's not an expensive proposition. I think they even have a free trial involved in Greenlight. So if you're looking for a way to really enable this that doesn't involve a lot of cash, I think that's a decent tool. And then the last thing I would say is that, like anything new that we are trying to learn, financial education, this is just a great opportunity to open up an ongoing dialogue with your kids about these concepts. What did it feel like? This is the job you chose to get, or these are the tasks you took on. What do you think of that? How do you like this idea of having money? What did it feel like the first time that money landed in your account for something that you did, right? That connect the dots between effort and reward. Like asking them how they feel about the place that they've chosen to give, or maybe going to visit the place that they're choosing to make a regular giving donation. What does it feel like to watch that money accruing, right? From the beginning point, if they have a goal that they've set of, can I accrue this much money by the end of the summer or the end of the year? I think this gives us an opportunity to open up really good dialogue and also to have conversations about their spending habits, to start to see, are they leaning in the direction of, boy, it's real easy to spend money and hard to save? Or does it go the other way around? I'm very reticent to spend money and I prefer to see my savings growing, so that we can help them find that middle ground where they'll have a healthy relationship with the flow of money in and out of their lives. So, of course, there are lots more advanced topics on this that we could dive into over time, but I wanted to just have this conversation about the kind of early days of opening up financial education and teaching tweens and younger teens about money. I hope you learned something today that you can apply if you have kids this age. And I'd love to hear from you if you have other ideas that you've used that you think have been really powerful with your kids. So social media is always a great way to hit me up. You can DM me at cskolnicki on Instagram, or find us at brilliant_balance and let us know what you're doing in this realm with your kids. Would absolutely love to hear from you. Okay, that is all for today, my friends. Till next time, let's be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.